Hello y'all, my name is Richard Mann, and I'd like to give you my utmost thankful gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to you at Porter Elementary for your efforts, your your genuine letters, and everything you did for Private Louis Harvey Mann. I'm not going to mention where your school is located because this is going to be on YouTube, and I'm not going to mention anybody's names except perhaps Officer Ryan, because I think you deserve some anonymity. It means nobody needs to know exactly who you are. It's safer that way. It just is. But I did want to acknowledge this wonderful gift that you helped your SRO officer put together. He contacted me, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, asking if I was perhaps related to Private Louis Harvey Mann. And when I told him who I was, he offered to send me his Bible. And it was quite emotional. Private Louis Harvey Mann was my great-grandfather's first cousin, and they were neighbors, and they were friends. And Private Louis Mann was killed during the Great War, 4 days before the end of the war, and I had no idea there even was a Bible until your SRO officer contacted me. And these things you put together are just mind-blowing to me. It's so wonderful. I have letters from the 3rd graders. I have letters from the 4th graders. I have letters from the 5th graders. I have scanned each and every one of these, and I have scanned each and every, I've photographed and scanned each and every piece that you have sent, and I'm going to send them on a flash drive to your SRO officer so that you can do what you want with them, make a presentation, keep them, whatever. I will put these artifacts that you were kind enough to send me in a file that I have for Private Mann, and I will keep them forever and pass them down to my children. Like I said, Private Mann and my great-grandfather were cousins, neighbors, and friends. And growing up, I remember my grandfather telling me stories of him. The first thing I want to thank you for is this Tennessee Blue Book, signed by your representative from Tennessee. That was really cool. Really cool. And I've been reading it. It's fascinating. I love Tennessee. It's a beautiful state filled with wonderful people. And I thank you. I do. This just blew me away. And I'm going to find some place to display it in my home. I'm told that you all arranged to have it flown over your state capital in Nashville in honor of Private Louis Mann, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. This is it's just wonderful. This particular case that y'all put together, I'm beyond words. I don't know what to say. I got goosebumps when I opened it up and saw it. And my son, my eldest son, took a picture. And it was just wonderful. It means a great deal to me. And I think what I'm going to do is, I've taken a picture of the Bible. I'm going to print a photograph of it. I'm going to take the original Bible and put it in one of my safes, because I have other family Bibles. That way it'll be kept safe. And the safes that I have are protected by fire and floods and things like that, so that this will be protected. I'm going to place the photograph back of this Bible, full size, back into this case, and then I'm going to display this in my home as well, along with the flag. I cannot tell you how much this means to me. I'm just unable. I'm a retired teacher, and I know what kind of work goes into these things, and the kind of effort that you all put into this, and I'm so pleased that you are interested in the Great War. It affected so many more things than people realize. It was the first war that introduced mechanization. In a really odd way, it served for the proving grounds of so many inventions. And it changed the entire political system, the landscape of Europe, and the rest of the Western world. Some of the effects that happened because of the Great War are still affecting us today. This is such an important conflict to learn about, and I'm so pleased that you're interested, not just in Private Mann, but in the millions of others. I'm going to read you a little bit about what I wrote about Private Mann, just so you know. Maybe your SRO officer told you some of these things. Maybe you didn't. I wrote it down, but I didn't want to forget, so I hope you don't mind if I just read it. Louis Harvey Mann was the youngest of 9 children. He was born to Louis Mann and his wife, Mary Cox Mann. He was born in a small town in Nebraska called Humboldt, 10 September 1891. When the United States entered the war in Europe in 1917, Louis volunteered. He wasn't drafted. He volunteered. He was 26 years old when he enlisted and single. No children, no spouse. However, he was taking care of his widowed mother. His father had passed away in 1910, and he was 26. He was the man of the house. His older brothers and sisters had all moved on, married, had families of their own. He was taking care of his mama. But when the war broke out, he figured he had a duty to his nation. In August of 1917, Louis entered basic training at Camp Funston. I believe now it's Fort Riley in Kansas. And he entered that in August of 1917. 21 May 1918, he left Camp Funston and traveled with his unit, 355th Infantry, 89th Division, to Camp Mills on Long Island, New York. On 3 June, Louis boarded with his unit aboard the transport ship RMS Adriatic. RMS means Royal Majesty's ship. It was a British ship. They boarded the Adriatic in Hoboken, New Jersey. They left for England and arrived in Liverpool early in the morning of 16 June 1918. After a brief stay in Camp Woodley, they marched as a unit south to Southampton and boarded a small steamer ship bound for Le Havre, France. This was on 24 June 1918. Now, I apologize, as I'm educated, but I'm not very good with the pronunciation of some of these French towns. So, feel free to make fun of me if you know how to pronounce these words, and I don't, because I don't. I'm going to do my best. Private Louis Harvey Mann moved with his unit to the front near Beaumont, France on 4 August. On the night of 7-8 August, Louis was subjected to a severe gas and shell bombardment attack. The unit continued on the front lines, conducting raids, patrolling the enemy wires, capturing prisoners, and gathering information for the upcoming St. Mihiel offensive. I'm sure that Mr. Ryan, Officer Ryan, has told you about the St. Mihiel offensive. It's famous, and it was brutal. I won't get into the graphics of it, but it was brutal. It was awful for these farm kids. The 355th were kids from Nebraska, Kansas, and they were just kids right off the farm. On the morning of 12 September, after a fierce artillery barrage, Louis's regiment advanced 20 kilometers. What is that, about 12 miles? Capturing the village of Uvicin, Bouillonville, Benay, and Jamin, along with capturing a large number of prisoners and much war material. Artillery, prisoners, rifles, ammunition, trucks, horses. You know, cavalry units were still a thing in the Great War. I lost my place here. Louis's unit stayed on the line until 8 October, when it was relieved by the elements of the 37th Division. They were given a much-needed rest at this time, received replacements, and were moved to the Argonne sector in preparation for yet another push, which means moving into battle. How frightening would that be? You've just tasted your first experience of armed conflict. You're terrified, absolutely terrified. You know what's coming. The courage that these men had to get up and march into the fire again is something I can't even imagine. These were, now Louis was 26, but most of these recruits were teenagers. Just awful, brutal. On 1 November, a new offensive was begun with Louis's regiment, held in reserve. They needed the rest. After 2 days of intense fighting, his unit again took up positions on the front lines to continue the advance, taking Barricourt, Beaufort, Lanneuville, Louzet, and Cessay, France, before the armistice was signed on 11 November, ending hostilities. I'm sure Officer Ryan has told you the Great War ended the 11th hour of the 11th month, or the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. 11 o'clock at night, 2300. 11 November 1918. Unfortunately, Louis fell in battle 7 November 1918. He survived numerous battles, numerous attacks, artillery, infantry, gas, and he was killed 4 days before he was at the end of the war and could go home. He was killed from a German mustard gas attack. That was another advent of the Great War, chemical warfare. And it has since been frowned upon and tried not to use again. It has been here and there, but it's brutal. It's awful. Nobody likes it. If my dogs wander back and forth, I'm sorry. They don't care that I'm making a video. They're wonderful dogs. I have Tilly and I have my black schnauzer, Herr General Erwin Rommel. We just call him Rommel. Anyway, gas attack just 4 days before the end of the war, 7 November. 7 November 2024 marks the 106th anniversary since my cousin Louis Harvey Mann fell in the Argonne as a member of the 89th Division, 355th Infantry. Louis Harvey left behind a widowed mother, 2 older sisters, and 2 older brothers. His body, I didn't know this until Mr. Ryan told me and sent me some information. I knew a great deal, but I didn't know some of this. Apparently, he was buried in a cemetery in France. He was exhumed, which means they dug his body up, moved to another cemetery, and buried a second time. That wasn't enough either. His body was first buried in France, however, his broken-hearted mother wanted him home. Now, if a soldier falls in battle, they send the body home to the family. But then they didn't have, mass air transport or anything like that. So they tended to bury the dead right where they fell or in cemeteries close to the battle. But his mother, he was the baby of the family. He was her caretaker. She wanted her baby home. So she paid out of her own pocket to have him exhumed a second time and sent home to be buried in the Mann family plot in the city cemetery in Humboldt, Nebraska. It's a really tiny town. There's only 800 people. It's a far southeast corner of Nebraska. The local Veterans of Foreign Wars post, number 269 in Humboldt, is named in honor of Harvey Mann. Post 269, Harvey Mann, post 269, Humboldt, Nebraska. And I didn't realize this, but I was asking the people of Humboldt, how they came to name it. And he was the first casualty of the Great War from Humboldt. And my guess is, the late date that he was killed, he might have been the only casualty killed from Humboldt. So they named the VFW post after him. A year or two ago, after 100 years, they sold the VFW because it's such a small town. They didn't have enough members, and now it's a cafe. But I have pictures of the sign when it was the post named after him. Now, I'm going to try and keep this short. I know you've got things to do. But these letters really touched me. I mean, they're just phenomenal. I like to read just 1 or 2 from each grade because I want you to know that I read them and they're important to me, and that you took the time to write them is important to me. I really want to thank you from myself, my children, and our entire family, because there's not many people left in our family related to Private Mann, but we hold him very dear in our hearts. I've got letters, I said, from Mr. Ryan sent me from 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th. These are just phenomenal. Dear Mr. Mann, sorry for your loss. I hope you feel like you have a piece of your family. Rest in peace, Private Mann. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. Dear Richard Mann, sorry for your loss. I know how you feel. I wish you could see him. Have a great rest of your life. Peace. And that's what they were fighting for. Peace. That's from the 3rd grade. 4th grade. To Mr. Mann, your family member gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. We want to honor this very brave soldier. I almost cried when I read this. The fact that you think about this, not just Private Mann, but about the people that sacrificed so that you could live in the greatest country on the planet. You have a right, you have an American right to say what you want, to worship where you want, and to have opportunity. This is the only country in the world where you have those kinds of freedoms. To Mr. Mann, we appreciate the sacrifice from your family. We want to honor this very brave and heroic soldier. Your family gave the best sacrifice ever. Please thank them. Exactly. Exactly. Thank all of them. Thank these people who marched into battle, marched into harm's way. Private Mann went over the ocean and gave his life so that these people, the war and the conflicts, couldn't spill over to his family, spill over into this country and harm his mother. Millions of soldiers did the same thing. 5th grade. Dear Richard Mann, sorry for your loss, but we are so glad you get to have the Bible back. It's cool you get to have a piece of your ancestor. You have a really cool ancestor. Hope you like this letter. I do. Thank you so much. I can't say that enough. This entire package is one of the greatest things I've ever had. And your SRO officer is phenomenal. To have sparked this interest in you, and for you to pour your heart out in these letters, I can see they're sincere. It's really wonderful. This person made a big army. That's just phenomenal. Dear Mr. Mann, I'm glad you get to have this piece of history from your ancestor. I hope you like the Bible. I'm sorry about your lost family member. You know, I'm a grown man, and men are supposed to be strong and not get emotional, but I read these, and I really did get emotional. You have no idea. You've never met me. I've never met you. But I read these letters, and I'm a retired teacher. So I've been around children, and y'all are wonderful. I'm really quite touched. And I don't know if Officer Ryan will let you look up another, I got a YouTube channel, and I did a short video on his family plot. He was brought home, but he just had a marker. He didn't really have a stone until 1953, when one of his sisters approached the Army, and they put a stone there. And people in Humboldt didn't forget him. People in my family didn't forget him. But honest, I didn't have any idea the Bible even existed until Officer Ryan found it on his own accord, contacted me, and then offered to send it home to his family member rather than keep it for himself, which would have been the easy thing to do. Hey, I apologize. I had no idea I'd spoken that long. I had to splice the end of this video because my camera only records for 20 minutes. I apologize. I didn't mean for this to be this long. This family, this history doesn't just belong to the families of the fallen or the families who serve. If you're an American who lives in this country, this history belongs to you as well. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful that you're studying it. Because if you study it, history is not just names and dates and places. History is things that have happened that affect the people who affect the people who affect you. This history affects all of us. So thank you so much. I cannot say that enough. Thank you so much for your generosity, your compassion, and your sincerity in all this. SRO Officer Ryan I cannot thank him enough for all the work he put through, and I can't thank you enough. Thank you. Back to class. Thanks for paying attention to this old man. Take care.